Hello.
Good morning. Can you guys hear us? Perfect. Good morning. I'm Barbara Hoblitzell from the Department of Education's Office of Post-Secondary Education, Policy Planning and Innovation. And I'm joined here today by Deanna Brown from Fed Loan Servicing. And Deanna is your PSLF expert. She's the guru. She is the representative for all of the public and proprietary schools. And she has a colleague who works with the private and graduate and professional schools. Before we get started, we're just a little curious. How many of you decided to attend this session because you are also pursuing public service loan forgiveness?
Yeah, that's what we kind of thought. There.
All right. Well, congratulations. So, originally passed in 2007 as part of the College Cost Reduction and Access Act, Public Service Loan Forgiveness, or PSLF, provides a relatively simple path to loan forgiveness for eligible borrowers. You make 120 qualifying payments on your direct loans in a qualifying repayment plan while working for a qualifying employer, and submit and have approved a certification application. Moreover, because the amount forgiven is linked to the performance of public service, the IRS has determined that the amount is not considered to be taxable income. I'll delve more deeply into each of these criteria in a moment, but it's important to keep in mind that without income-based repayment plans, PSLF couldn't exist and wouldn't work. A borrower needs to be making at least some payments that are lower than the payment amount that would be required under the 10-year standard repayment plan in order to have a balance remaining to be forgiven. This is important because the compensation for many public service jobs is insufficient to allow borrowers to affordably service their debt. However, it's also important for the common good that well-educated individuals commit to careers in public service despite the lower wage. PSLF is one way to both incentivize and reward that choice. Only payments made on federal direct student loans are eligible for PSLF. Parent Plus loans, even if made through the direct loan payment or direct loan program, are not eligible if it is the student who is working in public service. However, if the parent borrower is working in public service, their direct Parent Plus loan may be eligible. Perkins loans are not eligible. FFEL program loans are not eligible. However, direct consolidation loans are eligible, which enables borrowers to who choose to do so to consolidate their PSLF ineligible loans into the direct loan program and potentially qualify for PSLF. Borrowers seeking to consolidate Perkins or health profession loans should take care to consider the potential loss of benefits within those programs upon consolidation into direct lending. In some cases, it'll be more advantageous to the borrowers to not include these loans. The term public service organization covers a broad range of employers, including any federal, state, or local government organization or agency, and most not-for-profit organizations. An exception to this is that serving as an elected member of the U.S. Congress is not qualifying employment for PSLF. Many not-for-profit employers who are not tax exempt under Section 501c3 of the Internal Revenue Code also qualify because of the type of public service they perform. These include emergency management, military service, public safety, law enforcement, public interest law services, early childhood education, public service for individuals with disabilities and the elderly, public health, public education, public library services, or school library or other school-based services. The important factor is that the employer meets the eligibility criteria for PSLF, regardless of the function or specific job the borrower is performing for the employer, with one exception. Borrowers working for a religious organization or whose job responsibilities are religious in nature may not include any time spent participating in religious instruction, worship services, or any form of proselytizing when determining their full-time public service employment. As I mentioned previously, for parents with Direct Plus loans, the qualifying employment is the parent's employment, not the dependent student on whose behalf the parent borrowed. Borrowers with one employer must meet their employer's definition of full-time employment. However, for PSLF purposes, that definition must be at least an annual average of 30 hours per week. Borrowers who are working for more than one employer during the same period of time are considered to have worked full-time if the combined hours equate to an annual average of at least 30 hours per week. In some cases, borrowers working less than 12 months also qualify as having worked full-time for an entire year. For example, if a borrower has an employment contract or other period of employment for at least 8 months, an average of 30 hours per week over that period is considered employment or full-time employment. This is often the case for teachers and other school employees. The 120 required qualifying payments must be made under one or more of the following direct loan program repayment plans: IBR, pay-as-you-earn, repay, ICR, the 10-year standard repayment plan, and any other direct loan repayment plan that has payments that are at least equal to the monthly repayment amount you would be required to pay under the 10-year standard repayment plan. The standard repayment plan for direct consolidation loans is not the same repayment plan as the 10-year standard repayment plan for direct subsidized and direct unsubsidized and direct plus loans. And payments made under the standard repayment plan for direct consolidation loans do not qualify for PSLF purposes. Plus loans received by parents may not be paid under the IBR, pay-as-you-earn, or repay plans, the 3 repayment plans that are most likely to leave a borrower with the remaining balance to be forgiven under PSLF. The IBR, pay, and repay plans are also not available for direct consolidation loans that repaid plus loans received by parents. However, a direct consolidation loan that repaid plus loans received by a parent may be repaid under the ICR plan. To qualify for PSLF, borrowers must make 120 separate monthly payments after October 1st, 2007 for the full amount due under the plan within 15 days of the due date. The 120 payments do not need to be consecutive. While payments under certain repayment plans may be counted toward the required repayment or toward the required 120 payments, to receive any forgiveness under the PSLF program, you must make most of your loan payments under an IDR plan to have a remaining loan balance available after 120 payments have been made. A borrower in the repay plan may be making payments that are higher than the 10-year standard repayment amount, which would also reduce any remaining loan balance for forgiveness. Any month when the borrower's scheduled monthly payment under IBR, pay-as-you-earn, repay, or ICR is 0 will count toward the 120 qualifying payments if the borrower is also employed full-time by a qualifying public service organization during that month. A borrower cannot make a payment under a PSLF eligible repayment plan until the loan has entered repayment status. Even though one could voluntarily make payments on a new direct subsidized loan or direct unsubsidized loan while in school or during grace, those payments would not count as PSLF qualifying payments. Multiple partial payments that total at least the full scheduled monthly payment amount and that are made no later than 15 days after the scheduled payment due date for that month's payment will count as one single qualifying monthly payment for PSLF. Payments made when not required do not qualify. Lump sum payments made on behalf of borrowers who have served in the Peace Corps, AmeriCorps, or who are employed by the Department of Defense will be applied as multiple monthly payments. Easy for me to say. Anyway, so for those of you who have attended Ian Foss's sessions on income-driven repayments, you know our friend Billy Borrower. And so we're going to talk about PSLF in the context of our model borrower. So Billy, in this case, is single, has no dependents, and lives in Georgia. Billy has an adjusted gross income of $35,000 and receives an annual salary increase of 5% every year. Billy also has $50,000 in direct loan student debt at an interest rate of 6%, $23,000 of which is subsidized and includes loans for both undergraduate and graduate school education. As you can see, Without PSLF, Billy would only receive loan forgiveness under the pay-as-you-earn plan. After 20 years, Billy would have paid $71,782 and would receive forgiveness on the remaining balance of $36,538. However, if Billy worked in public service while making 120 loan payments, he would receive loan forgiveness under ICR, IBR, pay, or repay, with the largest amount forgiven under pay. Although the amount paid before forgiveness under repay is the same amount paid under pay, the amount forgiven is smaller because of the way interest subsidies are treated in repay. Nonetheless, in each case, the entire remaining balance is forgiven after 120 payments have been made, which, if those payments were consecutive, equates to 10 years. Another notable difference between loan forgiveness in the income-driven repayment plans and PSLF are the tax implications for the borrower when a remaining loan balance is forgiven. Under an income-driven repayment plan, the forgiven amount is generally considered income to the borrower. As you'll recall, under pay-as-you-earn, Billy's remaining balance of $36,538 after 20 years in repayment would be forgiven. However, based on Billy's projected income of $88,455 at that time, he would have an associated federal tax liability of $10,231. However, under PSLF, the forgiven loan amount is not considered income and is therefore not taxable. The full benefit of the loan forgiveness accrues to the borrower. PSLF is clearly very advantageous to borrowers, and it is important that those borrowers who are seeking to benefit from this program, especially those who will be completing their 120th payment in 2017, follow these important steps. The borrower will need to complete the PSLF employment certification form and submit it to Fed Loan Servicing. There's no requirement for borrowers to do so on a regular basis, but it can be very helpful to do so, especially if the borrower is changing employers. Upon receipt of the form, Fed Loan Servicing will confirm that the borrower has direct loans and that the employment listed qualifies for PSLF. If the borrower's loans are being serviced by another loan servicer, the borrower's loans will be transferred for continuing servicing by Fed Loan Servicing. They will determine whether the borrower's payments coincided with a period of eligible employment. If the borrower is still making payments, he or she may continue to submit employment certification forms, at which point Fed Loan Servicing will determine the eligibility of the employment and qualified payments. The loan forgiveness application is currently under development and will be available prior to October 2017, the date when the first borrowers will become eligible for public service loan forgiveness. One very important element for borrowers pursuing PSLF to remember is that they must be working for a qualified public service organization at the time they submit the application for forgiveness and at the time the remaining balance on the loan is forgiven. A borrower who makes 120 qualifying payments and leaves their public service job before applying for loan forgiveness will not be eligible for PSLF.
Now I'm going to go over the employment certification form, and this is the form that's needed so that we can start tracking the payments towards forgiveness. This form can actually be downloaded from our website. You can also get it from studentaid.gov, and all of the different federal servicers should also have this available on their sites as well. The first page of the form is just basically the borrower's demographic information, so they'll complete their date of birth, name, address, SSN number. And then the second page of the form is just the borrower's authorizations, understandings, and certifications. So the first part is just the borrower allowing us to have access to their employment information. Then we also review the eligibility requirements of the program so they understand what's required. And then the bottom part is just them certifying that the information they put on the form is accurate, and then the signature. And then the bulk of the form is the employer information. This is where the employer name will be filled out, the federal employment identification number, the employment begin and end dates. This is very important. This is something that is commonly filled out incorrectly on the form. So it's very important that either the employer puts the end date of when the employee left the organization or just checks the box that the person is still presently employed. So that's a very important thing to look at on the form before it's submitted. And then also the employer will indicate what type of entity they are, whether they're a government or a nonprofit. And then if they are doing particular public service organization things, then they'll indicate that on the form, whether it's emergency management, library services, or some of the other things that are in the program. And then the final part is just the employer, where they will indicate their name, their title, their signature, their contact information. One thing to correct on this slide, where the box 15, that is no longer on the current form, so that certification is not on the current form. That was changed because a lot of employers were missing that, so we just removed that to prevent that from being missed. And also, I just want to emphasize that when this form is submitted, whether it's yourself or you're counseling your students or borrowers on submitting the form, just make sure you double check everything before it's submitted, because little things can be missed, and then that will delay the process getting started towards forgiveness. So it's just important, make sure the title is there, the contact information for the employer is there, because little things like that can delay processing. So just double check everything before it's submitted. And then this final part just gives the instructions on where to submit the form. It is submitted to Fed Loan Servicing. It can be faxed in. It can also be mailed in, and it also can be uploaded on the website. Some common ECF issues that we see: inaccurate or missing end dates on the form that I just mentioned. Just make sure that employer puts that end date or checks the box that the employee is currently employed. Missing fields like the employer identification number. That's very important because we use that to determine the employer's eligibility. So again, just make sure that form is double checked before it's submitted so that we don't have to go back for missing or incomplete information. Payment tracking. Barb did mention that the student or borrower is not required to submit the employment certification form every year, but it is something that we recommend so that we can keep up to date on the payment tracking. One thing to keep in mind is that the payment tracking is never up to the present date of repayment. So for example, if we receive an employment certification form in this month, we're going to only be able to look at the payments from this month prior, because the employer can't certify future employment. Once we receive the new employment certification form in, that's when we're going to take a look at the payment tracking for that particular period. So we do recommend that it's sent in annually, and we usually recommend that they send it in around the same time that they do their recertification for their income-driven repayment plan. That way they don't have to remember 2 dates. They can just do that at the same time. Also, payments made to other servicers do count. So the payments do not have to be made while the borrower is serviced by Fed Loan Servicing. Once we do qualify the person for the program, we will take a look at any payments that were made at a previous servicer to see if those payments qualify. So that's a common misconception. They don't have to be on our platform in order for the payments to qualify. Some other common misconceptions. Eligible loan types. We did mention that only direct loans are eligible under this program. However, if someone does have other federal debt, such as FFEL loans, Perkins loans, those can be consolidated into a direct consolidation loan to get that debt forgiven. One thing to keep in mind, though, with consolidation, if a person has direct loan debt and then they also have FFEL debt or Perkins that they're trying to consolidate, if they've already made qualifying payments on those direct loans, they don't want to include that in the consolidation loan, because once that is consolidated, the payment tracking would start from payment number 1. So it's just keep that in mind when you're counseling your students about this. I recommend they contact the servicer so that we can take a look at their loan history, and then talk through that information with them so that they don't consolidate and then get some shocking information, after they've already done it. Employer eligibility, again, it It's based on whether the employer is eligible, not the specific job at the employer. So we're not really looking at the job duties. We're looking to make sure that the employer qualifies. The only caveat would be borrowers that are participating in the religious instruction, worship service, or proselytizing. Anytime doing that is going to be deducted from their full-time work requirement. But other than that, we're not focusing on job duties. Qualifying payment plans, again, only IDR plans, income-driven repayment plans, or the standard repayment plan is an eligible repayment plan type. So you just want to make sure when you're counseling students that they're aware of that. We've had borrowers that thought that they were making qualifying payments. They waited to submit the ECF form only to find out that the repayment plan they were on didn't qualify. So that's why we do recommend that ECF form is sent in early in the process. That way we can make sure they're getting the correct information and counsel them and make sure that they are on the appropriate repayment plan type to make sure their payments are being tracked. And then that falls into, the ECF form. They can wait till after they've done the 10 years. That is taking a chance because, again, they could be thinking, oh, I'm doing everything good, I'm good. No, you're not good because you're on the wrong repayment plan. So we recommend it's sent in as soon as they know that they want to enroll in the program, submit that ECF form so we can start tracking those payments. Now we're just going to take a look at some stats so you can kind of see how many people have already applied for this. This is some information for 2016. We saw the biggest uptick in August and September where we got about 40,000 employment certification forms a month. So it did start to uptick towards the end of the year. This is the number of borrowers with direct loans and qualifying employment. So as of September, it was about 500,000 borrowers who we found did qualify under the employment, and they also had eligible loan debt to be forgiven. The largest employer type that we see of people that are enrolled in the program are working for some form of government, so federal, state, local, some form of state, local government, state, local, or government, federal government agencies or entities. And then the second largest employer type that we see are people that are working for nonprofits. So altogether, we have processed over 1 million employment certification forms. 67% of those have been approved, and 33% of those have been denied. And I think that this is a good statistic because it kind of shows that most people that are applying are approved so that they do already have some type of awareness about the program requirements. Most of the people that are denied is for missing or incorrect information. That's why we emphasized, to just make sure that form is double-checked before it's submitted. I think it's a pretty straightforward form. It's just that there are little intricacies, such as putting, your title on there or putting the date on there. So we just want to make sure that information is submitted accurately and completely before it's submitted. That way we can cut down on the number of people that are being denied for that type of information. The second biggest denial reason is non-eligible loans. As we discussed, if they do have other federal loan debt, such as FEL or Perkins, they can consolidate that to get that into the program. And then the third one would be that the employer is not qualified. In regards to payment tracking, the biggest bulk of borrowers is actually in the 0 months tracking, which means that they are eligible for the program, but they haven't made any qualifying payments yet towards forgiveness. And that could be for various reasons. They could be on a forbearance, a deferment. They could have went back to school and are on an in-school deferment, or they just haven't made any qualifying payments yet. And then 1 to 24 months, we've got almost 200,000 people who are the 1 to 24 months tracking. The people that are closest in range on track to get forgiven would be people in the 97 to 120 months range, and currently that's at 139 borrowers. Now, one caveat to mention is that we don't know what we don't know. So as we mentioned, The way that the program is set up, you are not required to submit that employment certification form, before, well, you're not required to submit the form before you get to your 120 payments. So you could have people sending in things next year where we don't know what that number could be. Once it happens, then, we'll get there. But currently, as far as what we're tracking, this is the amount of borrowers who are on track to get closest to forgiveness. Qualifying repayment plans. The majority of borrowers that are enrolled in the program are on the IBR, income-based repayment plan. And then that would be followed by Repay-E and Pay-As-You-Earn. Amount borrowed by borrowers who had employment and loan certified for PSLF. The majority of people have loan debt between $25,000 to $50,000, and then also people who have loan debt between $100,000 to $200,000. So that's the biggest bulk of debt that we see that are people that are enrolled in the program. And then in regards to the adjusted gross income of people who are enrolled in PSLF, the biggest bulk are people who have income between $25,000 to $50,000, and then that would be followed by people who are within the $50,000 to $75,000 income bracket. Now we do have resources to get more information out and help you get more information out to your borrowers, students, and alumni. We have toolkits available on our website where you can download flyers, social media posts, different things like that to provide more awareness about the program. We also have information to share with your alumni offices. There are a lot of people who have already graduated who aren't aware about the program, so definitely make sure that those offices are getting this information. We also have reporting available, so if you're interested to see how many of your borrowers are already enrolled in public service loan forgiveness, we can get that information to you. Just contact myself or Lisa, and we can provide you a listing of that. One of the other questions that we get is about what are some of these specific employers that are enrolled in the program. If you're interested in seeing some of the specific employers by your state, also let us know. We can provide a listing to you. It's not an all-inclusive listing, but it will provide you a listing of people who have already been enrolled in the program. So you can kind of get an idea of what type of employers are in your state. We also have training resources. We have monthly webinars that your staff can enroll in. We also do borrower webinars. So if you'd like to get a webinar set up for your students to get more information about this, give us a call or an email, and we can set that up for your school. And we also have some information on our website where you can get a fact sheet to kind of give you an overview of the program and common misconceptions. So you can get all of that information from our website. So with that.
Yeah, so before we start
Okay.
questions, I just want to do one little wonky thing, being a data geek. So we love these data that Federal Loan Servicing provides to us, and many of you have probably heard some of the criticisms of this program that suggest that it's not necessarily targeting the appropriate borrowers. And I think these data really help to make the case that this program is working as it was intended. And while there are equal numbers of borrowers who have currently certified their loans and employment within that $25,000 to $50,000 range, and then in that $100,000 to $200,000 income range, what we see is that their income is generally within that $25,000 to $50,000 range, which is exactly the concern we were trying to address with the fact that people who enter into public service are oftentimes compensated at a much lower rate than those who are working in the private sector. So with that little plug, we'll move on to questions. So please come to one of the mics, and we'll be happy to answer your questions.
I have a couple of questions. Once an employer is submitted, so if the student is consistently submitting the form every year, do they have to, at the 10-year mark, go back and resubmit all those again? Or are you guys keeping track of all that?
We keep track of all of that, yes.
Okay. And then if a student, did their undergraduate and got their bachelor's, but then took like a couple of years off, but while they were off, they were making qualifying payments and they were working in public service, then decided to go back and get their master's. At that point, when they start to borrow for their master's, what happens at that point with regard to the time frame?
So the graduate loans they would be in the program, but they would be on a separate tracking period. So once you start making payments on your graduate loans, those would be on a separate tracking towards your 120 required payments. Also, for the undergraduate loans, usually they're going to automatically go on they would go on an in-school deferment, but you can waive that. If they've already gone into repayment, on those, you can waive that so you can still make payments while you're in graduate school on your undergrad.
If you're also working 30 hours or more.
Right, if you meet all the other qualifications, right.
There's online programs.
Can you give an example of what kind of payment plans don't qualify for this?
So like the graduated repayment plan doesn't qualify, the extended repayment plan doesn't qualify. So those are some examples of some of the repayment plans that don't qualify.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, I feel like I may have misheard you.
Okay.
But you said borrower who leaves public service once 120 payments are made but hasn't filed for forgiveness are no longer eligible if they don't file while they're still working in public service.
That's correct.
So if they don't know about the program, they did 10 years and they made qualifying payments that entire time, but now they're currently not working in public service, they've lost the opportunity to apply for forgiveness?
They can go back to a public service job.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so that is what you said.
Right.
Okay,
Yeah.
awesome. Not awesome, but thank you for
Right.
clarifying.
What we were trying to say is that at the time of forgiveness, at the time that we're about to try to determine forgiveness, you still have to be working at that public service organization. So if they've gone to a private entity, we wouldn't be able to grant forgiveness because they're no longer working at a public service organization. But they could come back.
Hi, for the income data of those that are currently with the public service loan forgiveness that they've turned in certifications, is that income based on household income or just the borrower income?
It's going to be the adjusted gross, it's going to be based on your adjusted gross income from your taxes. So depending on whether the person is married and
So it
that
could include spousal
income. It could include spouse, depending on which
double-checking.
repayment plan that you're using. Yeah.
Great, good to know, thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi, Nancy Alstott, Chowan University, North Carolina. I pushed this program really hard at my school, and I'm just wondering, it may be hard to answer, is there any threat of this program being abolished? And if so, is it good to start that paper trail? Will that ensure that you're maybe grandfathered in if you go ahead and get with your HR department, start that paper trail, that kind of thing?
So we can't address whether or not the program may be at risk. I mean, certainly the program is in effect now, and until Congress does something differently, it's in effect. We do not know whether or not submitting an ECF form would grandfather somebody into a program if, in fact, Congress were to take action to change or eliminate the program. We think it's a good practice.
And this may have been addressed in the first question. I'm sorry if I misheard or anything. If you go on to grad school from your undergrad, you're in deferment, technically, but you can still make payments while in deferment that count towards the 120 payments?
No.
You cannot while you're in deferment.
If there are no required payments, they will not count towards public service loan forgiveness.
Thank you, ladies.
So that's why you would ask for the waivement for the deferment if you're an undergrad.
Right.
So that those payments would count. But then if it was during the transaction of the, meaning that you submitted the waiver, you guys would backdate from the day that you had payment, right?
Well, the payments, there would be no backdating because if they made a payment while they were on an in-school deferment, that wouldn't qualify.
Okay. I mean, that's something to think of, looking at a better communication to students or flag them to inform them, maybe an email or something. Hey, we noticed you've been on this plan. We noticed you've gone, because that's automatic now. The systems automatically puts them into in-school deferment, and sometimes a borrower does not know that. I had a an employee that came to me about that, and I explained it, and she was just like, I wish my servicer, that was you guys, just would said, hey, sorry.
Right.
Hey, would you guys, it would have been a nice little PS email going, hey, we noticed that you rolled back in school. You want to know, and we know you're on the PSL, because I encouraged I've been doing the last year and a half faculty presentations because I just didn't want them all coming to me after October 1st, 2017 going, why aren't my loans not getting paid off because I'm FFELP? And so I'm starting to educate everybody on our campus about this because I know it's going to be a very popular topic. So I encourage them to automatically certify every year because you never know, something can get messed up or something. And then that would also help the cause about if they were not employed at the time with the 10 years, if they finalized their last year of employment, at least you would have all those other years counted towards it in case that 1 year they're not there. Correct? Okay, I just making sure.
Yeah.
And the last two things, sorry, is one, I know Fed Loans, you're doing an awesome job. I was just wondering, one, can we get like a YouTube video or something? And two, is there a way that you guys can put out a presentation for schools to do in front of our faculty or schools or something so that we're preaching the same thing over? I mean, I had to create my own. I know we've worked with each other. And then I love, and you guys, everybody in this room, if you need, Dana's awesome. She's presented, we did a Skyping thing. Deanna and I did a Skyping thing, it was awesome. But I can't get her, she's on the East Coast when I have a group that wants to meet at 6 p.m. I can't keep her there until like 7 or 8. But it would help if we had that, so.
Yeah, I mean, we can definitely tweak it a little bit to make it more something that you can use on your own, definitely.
Yeah, I've had faculty, because they can't attend, then they want to see a video, they read your material, they don't sure.
We are actually working on a video.
Yay.
And the webinars that we do are also recorded, so those
Okay.
can actually also be viewed at any time as well.
We encourage that, but
Okay.
as we all know, everybody, even us, want to just click
Yep.
on something.
Okay, I have two questions, please. One is, if the student is not approved, their loans are not qualifying, do you all notify them? You do notify
Yes,
them?
yes. They get a
Okay.
notification either way, whether they're approved or denied.
Okay, well, my students must be approved then. Secondly, any way that you're going to cap this forgiveness?
That is not
I know
something
it's
that's.
in reference to the other
right.
question, but
It's
still.
an act of Congress. And
Right, it's not
we have
something
no
that's
way
in
of
the current
predicting what would
program.
happen
Have you heard any
legislatively.
chatter about it?
The
You're not going to give
The
it up, are you?
president, I think at some point did, that was one of their.
It was a
Yeah, but
budget
it-
proposal. It was a
But
budget proposal.
$57,500, that's a drop in the bucket to medical school loans.
Right,
Right.
Okay.
No action was taken on that budget
Okay.
proposal.
right.
Thank you.
Just to clarify something I think I heard you just say, so if someone is in a extended or standard repayment plan, they cannot qualify.
The
These are
standard
only-
10-year repayment plan is an eligible loan type, extended is not.
So if you are not basically on an income-based repayment plan, you can't qualify for this.
You have to be on an income-driven repayment plan, so the pay-as-you-earn, repayee, IBR,
Okay.
ICR, or the standard 10-year repayment plan.
Okay.
In order for the payments to qualify for forgiveness.
Okay.
And
My
just to clarify, one of the reasons why the 10-year standard payment plan is
There wouldn't
included,
be anything left.
there weren't IDR
Yeah,
funds until.
Yeah, yeah. My other question is about if people change jobs during that time, so go from a nonprofit to another nonprofit, perhaps from one school to the other, I'm asking for a friend. Do you have to just go back to your previous employer one time and have that, like the start and end dates submitted, or?
Yep.
Okay, so
Yeah,
then
we
that
would just-
stays on file?
Yeah,
and-
we would just need the employment certification form from that employer. And then if you switch jobs, just submit a new employment certification form for the next employer.
Okay,
But we keep everything on file. Yep. That's one thing I didn't mention, but I did see this come up a few times where we would receive an employment certification form for one employer, and on the form it lists like the beginning and the end dates. Then we would get another employment certification form for the next year, and then I've seen some where the begin date is different. So that's another thing, just to double check, and I think it might just been a clerical error, but that would raise a flag. So if your employer said you started,
this date this year, when we get that new form in, we expect it to be the same because we do compare that and keep it on file. So just wanted to point that out. Go ahead.
Good morning. My name is Carolyn, and I work at the Seattle School of Theology and Psychology. So we have a lot of divinity, Masters of Divinity students graduating, and I try to talk to them about PSLF. The thing that I really push with them is to document. Whenever you are working with one of your clients, be sure that you document the time you spend with them that's not religious content. If you're only working in your office, make sure you document that. If you're working at a church but you're the secretary, be sure to document that. I just want to make sure that I'm telling them the right thing, because a lot of them feel like, if I just say God once, am I now disqualified? So I just don't know how to, yeah.
You're not disqualified, but we rely on the employer to tell us that information. So it's not something like they don't have to send us like logs, showing. We're going to depend on when the employer submits that, they're certifying that that person met the full-time work requirement outside of worship services, religious instruction, or proselytizing. So that's definitely something that they would want to work out with themselves and whoever is responsible at their entity for certifying their employment.
What if they are the employer?
What's that? What if they're the employer? If it's a self-employer situation, we reserve the right to request additional information. So in that situation, they may want to keep some records just in case there's questions or anything. But that happens, so we would still be able to, work with them on that.
Because most of our counseling students do want to start their own practice. So I have to talk to them about that as well, how to document what they're doing in their offices and how they're dealing with their students. So am I on track with that?
Yes.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Good morning, Gloria Ponce Rodriguez, Fresno Unified. I heard something on the news and I have to ask you. You probably heard about it. It was on Fox and also this morning. Obama is forgiving loans for people with disabilities and also they're unemployed. Is that true? Because that was on the news. And I need to validate that because it just came on last night and this morning, and Fox News, they're advertising. I even have a video of it. I had to video it because I had a, is this true? Because we do have a lot of people that are on disability and they can't pay back, so they're trying to clean all of that up, but they said they're gonna forgive billions of dollars worth of loan debt. Is that true or false?
We're going to invite Ian Foss up to the dais because this is something that's happening through
Right now?
FSA. So.
Okay, all right, good. It's a good question for everybody, right?
Oh, here. You can, no, but you can have my mic.
Hello, everyone. I'm just going to lean over this table for a while. So there are discharge programs available to those who are disabled. It's called the Total and Permanent Disability Discharge. It's not a simple matter of being on disability and you can get your loans discharged. There are a variety of pathways to get your loans discharged through total and permanent disability. One of them is receiving disability benefits through the Social Security Administration. We've recently started doing data matches with the Social Security Administration and proactively reaching out to borrowers that we have determined qualify for discharge on the basis of their disability benefits. But a borrower could also go to a physician who could certify that they're totally and permanently disabled, and we would discharge their loans.
Okay, but they also said people that have been unemployed for a long period of time.
Yeah, so I can't get into the person's head who was saying that. One thing that they could have been saying that makes this true is about income-driven repayment, where borrowers who are unemployed would likely have $0 payments, and if they are unemployed for a long period of time, their payments could be zero for 20 or 25 years, at which point their loans would be forgiven. It's not a program that is, it's not structured around borrowers who are unemployed, but those who are unemployed would benefit from it perhaps more greatly than others.
Thank you for clarifying.
Oh, wait, just since you said that, if they had $200,000 in debt and they had zero payments for 25 years, and that $200,000 of debt would be taxable. Okay.
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
Got
But keep in mind, at that point, if they have zero income and they have $200,000, there's provisions within the IRS code, and we are not tax advisors. We don't ever explain what the IRS does. But there may be other kinds of programs that would enable them not necessarily to have a significant tax liability.
Okay, got it. My question was about, since you're looking at qualifying payments and not consecutive, if they ever fall into default, does that disqualify them?
If they go into default, any payments that they make while they're in default do not qualify. But it doesn't, let's say, for example, they made payments and they were in the program prior to default, those would still be there. So if they rehabilitated and then they started making payments again, then they would pick up where they left off. So they wouldn't lose their entire payments tracking that they made prior to default.
Okay, great, thank you.
Hi. If a borrower didn't know about it for whatever reason and has been working for an employer who would qualify, even if their payments that they're required to make are zero, you can
Right.
give them credit for past years and past payments that they have made once they
Right.
apply for the program?
Yes, as long as they met the eligibility requirements for the program, this was eligible loan type, direct loans, they were on an eligible repayment plan, IDR, standard 10-year repayment, while they were working full-time at the public service organization. Once they submit the employment certification form, we're going to look at the previous payments and track and count how many of those payments already qualify towards forgiveness. And we also let the borrower know that. So we notified them of how many payments they have towards forgiveness. So yes.
Okay. Many of these students are going to be in this program. They may go back to school, and in some cases, these are students who don't come to our particular school. What should we suggest to students to make sure, especially when they're in that income-driven and only have payments of zero, they don't need the in-school deferment and they want to keep making those payments? What should I suggest that they do to make sure it doesn't go into deferment?
Well, they would want to contact the servicer because usually that's an automatic thing, when we receive the enrollment information from NSLDS. So all they have to do, as long as it's a loan that has already gone into repayment, that it's on an in-school deferment, they would be eligible for that waiver, and they would just contact the servicer, and we can give them the waiver information to get that done. Yep.
Hi, my name is Rosemary. I'm from Tufts Dental School in Boston. And my question is about return of service scholarship programs, whether employment via these programs would count as qualifying employment. My big example is the National Health Service Corps has a scholarship for our students where in exchange for agreeing to work after graduation, National Health Service Corps provides a bunch of funding for students during school. But they do wind up borrowing a little bit because the living stipend is small, and they may have undergrad loans as well. So even though they're working for the National Health Service Corps in exchange for having received scholarship funding, does that employment count as qualifying employment?
So they're not actually working for the National Health Service Corps. They're usually placed in like a federally qualified health center, or they're on an Indian reservation, or they're working in some other underserved medical clinic. Provided that employer that they're working for, who's actually paying them, is a qualifying employer, the fact that they're receiving benefits from National Health Service Corps does not diminish their eligibility for PSLF. The same is true for medical professionals who didn't receive the scholarship, but rather are receiving National Health Service Corps benefits because of their employment. They can receive both benefits.
Okay.
The same is true of many of the other HHS loan cancellation benefits. Teacher cancellation, you can get that and PSLF at the same time. It's all good.
Okay, so that participation in the loan repayment program also counts as well, as long as the employer is a
It's all about the employer.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. That's great news.
Hi. My daughter filled out the application for loan forgiveness, and her employer qualifies. But she was told as long as she chose the income-based repayment, she would not qualify. Who does she need to contact?
She can just contact the customer service number. You said that they told her that if she had IBR, she would not qualify?
Right. They gave her a choice. She could choose 10 payments of, 120 payments of $248 a month, or go on income-driven repayment of $48. But if she did that, she wouldn't qualify.
Yeah, I can, if you want to give me her contact information, we can make sure that we have a rep follow up with her.
That would be great.
Yes,
I will
just
give
see me
that to you.
afterwards and we can follow up to make
Thank
sure and
you.
clarify, yes.
Hi, for the Parent Plus loans, when the parent works for a qualifying employer, what type of loan repayment plan do you need to be under to qualify for PSLF?
What we recommend is that for parents that they actually consolidate those loans into a direct consolidation loan. That way they can get on the income contingent repayment plan.
Okay.
Because that's the only repayment plan that's going to make them benefit from the program and have a possibility of having something left to be forgiven after the 10 years of payments. So they want to consolidate and then get on the ICR plan.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Hi, kind of piggybacking on a couple of questions back. So a student or a borrower that works for public service, they don't go ahead and fill out the employment, but they've maybe worked for 3 or 4 nonprofits. When they do finally submit the employment verification and whatnot, do they need to then go back to all of the previous and get like start, end date, end date? And is it then, I'm assuming, like HR or their direct supervisor at the time, or who?
Yeah, it has to be someone at the organization that is qualified or authorized, rather, to certify their employment. So usually it's somebody in the human resource or human capital office, or it could be the person's direct supervisor or manager. But it has to be, so say for example, if you were getting another job and they were calling for references, it has to be someone like that at the job that can certify that person's employment.
But they would have to go back to each of the previous ones to
right,
get
and then
everything,
submit the form.
and then submit all 7 of them if there were,
Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Kind of an odd question, but so if a student wanted to start their own 501c3 incorporated company, would they then qualify for this loan forgiveness program?
They could qualify. We would still go through the same, that we have to look at the same requirements to make sure that the employer is qualified. But again, with starting a person that's certifying their own employment type of situation, we do reserve that we might want to get additional documentation. So they may be required to submit some additional documentation. But that does definitely, it still qualifies, even if you have your own 501c.
Okay, thank you.
If I may, I'd like to go back to the non-qualifying payment plans. For those individuals in those types of plans, so the graduated plan, for example, if they switch over to a qualifying plan, does the clock start over?
Well, the clock hadn't really started because they weren't in an eligible repayment plan.
Okay.
So at whatever point they begin making payments in that eligible payment plan while their qualifying employment is occurring, those payments count.
Got it. Thank you.
So sort of like a clock starting over.
I have a question about the consolidation servicer situation. Because I work heavily with all of our students who are out of school through their servicers, everything with that. When a student consolidates, usually whatever servicer they have, they will get a new servicer. And then from there, whatever that servicer is, I assume when they go to apply for the public service, they apply through Fed Loan. At that point, would everything then transfer over to Fed Loan as their new servicer for everything?
So once they submit the employment certification form and we determine that they're eligible, if they are with another servicer, whether it's a consolidation loan or without a consolidation loan, then we would initiate a transfer process to get their loans transferred to us for servicing. Also, on the consolidation application, there's a question that will ask them if they're interested in public service. If they indicate that they are interested, then whichever servicer that they choose to go with, we'll send them information about public service. Once they submit that ECF form, and if they're approved, then that's when we would initiate a transfer process to us for servicing.
Okay, follow-up. If you want to consolidate your FFELP and direct loan, but you don't want to include your Perkins, how would you avoid doing that with consolidation?
On the consolidation application, you actually are able to select by loan level which ones you want to include. So you would just not select your Perkins loans during the consolidation application.
Excellent, thank you.
You're welcome.
My question has to do with employers. I think I heard you say somewhere along the way that employers must be enrolled in the program.
No, there's no enrollment.
I just want to make sure I didn't hear that.
Yeah, no, there's no enrollment in the program.
So just government agency or 501c3?
Employer, any type of government agency, 501cs, private nonprofits, public child service agencies.
Y'all will verify.
Right. We will
the
verify
eligibility
the
of the
employers. Yep.
Thank you.
Hi, Nicole Lehman, University of Northern Iowa.
just want to ask a quick clarification question because we work with a lot of teachers, and we talk to them about different loan forgiveness options when they graduate. This cannot be paired with federal teacher loan forgiveness, can it?
Sure, it can.
It can?
Let me clarify that.
Thank you.
All right. It can't, okay, let's say, for example, a person gets teacher loan forgiveness. So for teacher loan forgiveness, you have to be working as a teacher, for 5 years.
Yes.
Any payments, and let's say they get that teacher loan forgiveness, any payments that they made during that 5-year period where they got their teacher loan forgiveness will not count towards PSLF.
Towards the
So you
10
can
years.
do it together, but you can't get credit. You can't double dip. So you
Okay.
can't get credit for the same amount of time that you got your teacher loan forgiveness with public service loan forgiveness. What we usually recommend in those situations is that people go for teacher loan forgiveness first because that's only a 5-year work requirement, whereas public service loan forgiveness requires 10 years of payments. So go get your teacher first and then start PSLF if you feel like you're still going to have, loan debt after your 10 years after getting your teacher loan forgiveness. Yes.
Perfect. Thank you very much for clarifying that.
Sure. Any other questions? Well, thank you very much.